All right, class, because outlining is so important, I wanted to create a video that discussed it in some detail. And where we're going to start is with the thesis. It's a good idea to have your thesis, to have an idea of what your thesis is going to be prior to writing your outline, because it's the sentence that really starts it all off. It's the overview of your entire paper. It's the most important sentence in the paper. So that's a really good place to start because you can measure your main points and subpoints of your outline off of the thesis and make sure that you are completely and thoroughly proving or illustrating or discussing your thesis. But the reasons why to write an outline are actually pretty vast. First of all, it's going to help you get started. And sometimes that's the hardest part. A lot of times we deal with writer's block, and an outline can limit that. I'm sure you've all experienced sitting in front of your computer with the cursor blinking, wondering what are you going to write about. Part of that is because a lot of you worry about what the intro paragraph is going to say or how to start off the intro paragraph. And it's just a lot of stress and a lot of pressure, especially if you wait to the last minute and procrastinate. But the thing that happens is you can really just get your thoughts down on paper, and that relieves a lot of that pressure. You don't have to worry about writing, say, 1,000-word paper. You just have to worry about getting your main ideas and your subpoints for those main ideas down so that you can move forward. And it makes the process a lot less daunting. First of all, because you're limiting that writer's block and you're getting started on your paper without all that pressure. But also, when your outline's finished, as we'll discuss in a few minutes, the rest of the writing process is a lot less daunting as well. This is a sample outline of what a body paragraph should look like on an outline. You'll notice that the sentences here are complete sentences. You may have written outlines before in which you just offered kind of bullet points with a couple of words that key you in onto what you're going to be talking about in that paragraph. But it's best to write complete sentences because, for one thing, it gives a much more detailed view of what the paragraph is going to cover. But also, it actually, again, saves you time in the long run. You already have half of each paragraph written, or at least we'll say a third of each paragraph written when you move on to the writing stage. So I just wanted to show you this to give you an idea of what a paragraph should look like in outline form. I won't read these sentences, but they come from a document that I'm also putting here on Canvas. Another reason you want to write an outline is because it gives you a bird's eye view of your paper. You get to see the whole picture without reading an entire paper. Your main points and your subpoints are laid out there in detail, and you can see them without a whole lot of reading effort necessarily. And because they're laid out so clearly for you, it's a lot easier to see if the points are complete. It's not possible for things to get lost in a paragraph, a fully written paragraph, because you haven't written any fully written paragraphs. It's in skeleton form, so those points are a lot easier to see, and because they're in detail, you can really get a good idea if those points are complete. Are each of your main points, your topic sentences for your paragraph, combined? Are they thoroughly and fully illustrating or explaining or proving the thesis? And are each of the subpoints in the paragraphs combining to fully, clearly, thoroughly illustrating, proving, or explaining the main point of that paragraph, which would be in the topic sentence? You can also find out quite easily if the organization works because everything's laid out so clearly, and possibly more importantly, it's a lot easier to move things around in the outline stage. If you find out once you've completed your outline that ideas would be best served elsewhere, or you need to move things around, that's much easier to do when you've just got everything in outline form. Once you've written your paragraphs and you try to move stuff around, multiple sentences need to be rewritten. It's just a big hassle. So organization is much easier to work with. And you're going to have confidence in generating ideas when it comes to writing the actual draft. Like I said, you've got your main points and your sub points down. They're laid out clearly and in detail. And now it's all about making connections and further explaining those points. But since those points are down there already, the ideas can kind of ruminate in the back of your mind, even when you're not working on your outline. So that confidence is definitely there. Here's another example of a body paragraph in outline form, but I put this one up here to make a note about transitions. You'll notice that the topic sentence begins by stating, in addition to jump-starting the act of writing, comma. Jump-starting the act of writing was the previous point, the point in the previous paragraph of this particular argument. And by starting the topic sentence of the second body paragraph, briefly touching on that previous point, I'm providing a transition from that last point into this new one. And just that simple introductory part of the sentence there makes a big impact on providing flow and providing a sense of unity to the overall paper. So it's a really good idea that in your topic sentences for all of your paragraphs after that first one, that you briefly touch on that previous point and move to the next one. An outline is really like a GPS for you when you go off on your journey of writing this paper that you have to write, whatever paper it is. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced this. I know I have. I have had somewhere that I needed to be, and I just left. I didn't worry about grabbing directions, or at the time I didn't have GPS. I'm a little bit older than most of you, so I haven't always had GPS since I've started driving. But I just figured I pretty much know how to get there. I'll make my way there. And the experience was incredibly stressful. I've done it multiple times for some reason. I don't know why. But every time it's been very stressful for me. And I imagine for you, if you've been through that. The reason GPS is such a big market is because people don't like to experience that. People don't like to have somewhere they need to be with a particular timeline and not have something to help guide them along the way. It's the same thing with writing and with an outline. Your outline is like your set of directions. It's your GPS. You are starting off on a journey. You do have somewhere you want to be, in that you have a purpose that you need to accomplish. And there is going to be a timeline for all of your papers, of course, because there are due dates. So a lot of that same stress can be felt unless you have an outline. And an outline is going to keep you on track. It's going to make sure you don't take wrong turns along the way. You have an idea of the direction you're going before you take off. And that's one of the beautiful things about outlines. Lastly, two more incredibly beautiful things about outlines is that they provide efficiency and clarity for the writing process. There's kind of as far as efficiency goes, there's kind of a mental anti-lock brake system that you have when you have written an outline. You may have experienced this also. Again, I know I have. Sometimes you'll be part of the way through writing a paragraph and you realize, I don't have as much to say about this point as I thought I did originally. And that can be a huge problem. Again, it can be stressful. Generally, it causes our brains to lock up because now we're concerned, do I have to find a whole new point to write? Do I try to stretch this out to be a complete paragraph? Do I not have a thorough paragraph and get in trouble with Mr. Mott on that? It's a huge problem, and like I said, it tends to just lock up the brakes of our mind. We don't really know where to go from there. But since your points are laid out clearly in outline form, it's very difficult to find yourself in that situation because you can already see if you have enough to write about a particular point, and you can see, I mean, the subpoints that you're offering in your outlines for each body paragraph, those are the subpoints, and you just need to explain those. So if you can come up with at least 2, but preferably 3, maybe even 4 subpoints, you're going to have enough to write for that paragraph. That paragraph is going to be complete. It's going to be thorough. It's going to be developed. So outlines really prevent you from ending up in that situation. And as far as clarity goes, outlines make it a lot easier to recognize confusing points. You avoid the because you can see your main points and your subpoints so clearly that and they're not, you don't have to read through an entire paragraph to pick out those main points and subpoints when you're proofreading. You can see them clearly, and you can see if any of those points are confusing in any way. You can also see if any of those points are contradictory in any way. And again, it's a lot easier to make changes at the outline stage. If you made a confusing point or a contradictory point, and then you further expanded on that or explained it because of you're writing your draft and you didn't write an outline, that's just more work that has to be done to rectify that situation. One more sample outline of a body paragraph, just to give you an idea again of what these look like. But again, I want to make a note about transitions. A few moments ago, I showed you transitions in a topic sentence that transition your point from one paragraph to another. Here you see transitional words within the paragraph. You see also, comma, and lastly, comma. And those are even more simple than the transitions in the topic sentences. They're just one word. But what they do is they trigger in the reader's mind a sense that that point that follows also or lastly is in addition to previous points that are made in that paragraph. So again, like the transition in the topic sentence, you're providing a sense of unity and a sense of flow, but this time within the paragraph. So use transitions in your topic sentences after the first body paragraph, and also use transitions within your body paragraphs when you're moving on to the next subpoint. It's a small thing, but it really makes a big difference. And then once the outline's complete, it's really a sigh of relief. Everything, literally everything moving forward is going to be so much easier. First of all, your research can be more focused. If research is assigned for a paper, you shouldn't be researching your topic in general. If you're writing about gun control, you shouldn't just type gun control into Google and do your research that way. You're making a lot of work for yourself, because that research isn't supposed to just be about your topic. It's supposed to specifically back up the points that you're making. So when you have a good detailed outline, you have those points that you need the research to back up. You know specifically what those smaller points are going to be. So you know what you're supposed to research, and your research is a lot more focused on those specific points. It makes research much quicker, much more efficient, and much easier. And it also kind of makes sure that you're using research the way that you're supposed to. Plus, the hard part is done. I mentioned earlier that roughly a third of your paper is already written. If you write a good outline, you might want to do some polishing, but you've basically got a third of your paper written. But not only that, you've gotten the hard part written. You've got your topic sentences for your paragraphs, the sentences that are going to introduce the subpoints within the paragraphs. The thesis was already written. So those are the parts that take a lot of the creative power. Those are the points those are your words that are doing whatever it is that your paper's trying to do, whether it's an argument or a compare and contrast or cause and effect or problem solution, whatever the purpose of the paper is. What you're supposed to do to achieve that purpose is already done. The rest of the paper, all you have to write at this point is the commentary on those points. You expand on those points, you further illustrate those points, you explain them if necessary. You might be including research, which we just talked about, but that's all that's left at this point. And it didn't feel, like we talked about earlier, it didn't feel daunting, and it didn't feel like a lot of pressure to get the outline down, but now the hard part's done. And you can take a break. Part of the benefit of the writing process, one of the many benefits, is that it's forcing you to take your time with your paper. You're generally going to have, at the very least, a week to complete a paper, but a lot of times 2 weeks and maybe even longer to complete a paper. So you should be using that time, taking your paper step by step through the writing process. The outline is one of those steps, and if you complete your outline and it's not the last day before the paper's due, then you have some time to just take a breath. Hard part's done. Next step is research if it's assigned, otherwise it's starting writing your draft. But you can relax a little bit, let the ideas ruminate in the back of your mind, and then after that you can sit down and write your draft. And you can even do that in steps, by the way. But when you sit down to write your draft, you have that confidence that we spoke about. You probably already started generating some ideas of how you want to connect the points or illustrate or explain or prove or further expand on the points. You've got your research done, and you can just do your best and not work under the pressure of sitting down to write a paper at the last minute without having a whole lot to go off of and having done your research properly if it's assigned. And I hear students sometimes say I work better under pressure and that's why I procrastinate. And let me just say that's BS. It's not. You don't work better under pressure. You just haven't tried to not procrastinate if you're someone who procrastinates. I promise you that you work better if you spread things out over time. Your final product is going to be much better. And if you write a good outline, it's very difficult for your final product to not be a very good paper. Okay? I also have this document here online for you, and I mentioned earlier, that's where I brought those sample body paragraphs from. This is an outline of an argument that I've written. I've written this outline, and it's an outline for an argument why students should write outlines. So it gives you an idea of what a good outline looks like, at least for a 3 body paragraph paper. And again, kind of goes over some of the stuff that we spoke about here. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is outlines.